This one is.
Can you hear me in the back of the room? Could you turn it up a little? Testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me in the back of the room, please? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be getting the hearing started in just a moment. There are a number of people who are trying to sign up and get in, and we want to give them an opportunity to get in the room, and we'll get started in just a moment. If you bear with us for just another 5 minutes, and we'll be getting started. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to call the hearing to order. My name is Bruce Jordan. I'm with the Office of Air Quality and Planning and Standards with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. We'd like to welcome you to the hearing tonight, and we want to make sure that we provide time to hear from everyone here tonight, and we do have a schedule of people who have signed up to speak, and we'll try to follow it as close as we can. We've asked Mr. John Talmadge to help us with that because he knows a lot of the people here. But first, I'd like to introduce Mr. Michael Shapiro. Mr. Shapiro is our acting assistant administrator for the Office of Air and Radiation for Washington in Washington D.C., and that is the program that heads the air pollution program for the U.S. EPA. Mr. Shapiro has an opening statement he'd like to make, and so I'd like to introduce you to him now, Mike.
Thank you, Bruce. As Bruce said, my job at the moment is as acting assistant administrator. I'm managing the federal air quality programs, and in that capacity, I'm pleased to be here to sit in on this hearing and learn your opinions about one of our most important regulatory efforts in the air toxics program. I think that through the process of consultation and the information we get here and in our previous hearing and in written comments, we're looking forward to producing the best possible regulation for protecting human health and the environment. With me tonight are Bruce Jordan, who did the introduction. He's director of the Emission Standards Division in our office that's responsible for writing the regulations. And Jan Meyer, who is going to be conducting the hearing tonight, is head of that project and is responsible for much of the detailed work. In addition, there are a couple of other people in the audience from EPA, Stan Myberg, who's the air director for Region 6, which includes Louisiana, and Warren Banks, I believe, is in the room somewhere. Warren, there he is. Warren is with the staff of our administrator, Carol Browner, and he's joined us tonight so that he can learn firsthand your thoughts about our air toxics regulations. While we're here, we also will be visiting some of your communities to learn firsthand the nature of the problems facing you and the nature of the situation here. Again, the purpose of this hearing and our visit is to ensure that we can write the best possible regulations. I'm glad to see so many of you here tonight. I'm especially pleased because we're really here at your request. EPA normally conducts its hearings in Washington, D.C. or Durham, North Carolina. In this case, because of the importance of the air toxics issue to this community, and because of the fact that so many of the facilities that will be affected by the regulations are located here, we felt it was important to come here and to learn firsthand your thoughts about these regulations. The regulation that we're dealing with tonight is specifically focused on the synthetic organic chemical manufacturing industry. But it is just one of many sources of toxic air pollutants that we will be addressing as we implement the Clean Air Act of 1990. In fact, there are a large number of sources of toxic air pollutants that we must deal with. For example, about half of the toxic air pollutants, as we understand it, really come from mobile sources such as automobiles. Another significant portion of toxic air pollutants comes from small sources such as metal finishing facilities, dry cleaners, print shops, and other small facilities that we will be addressing under our program. So certainly large plants and factories such as chemical plants and petroleum refineries are significant sources of toxic air pollutants, but we have a much broader, more comprehensive job to do, and we have to address sources of toxic air pollutants across the board. Under the Clean Air Act, we're doing that. For example, we recently proposed regulations to change the formulation of gasoline, which will result in a significant reduction in the emissions of toxic pollutants from motor vehicles. We recently completed regulations on urban buses that will significantly reduce the emission of toxic particulates from new buses as they are brought into use. We've also this year proposed rules, and will shortly finalize them, on toxic air pollutant emissions from coke oven batteries, from hazardous waste treatment facilities, and from dry cleaners. We've also finalized a unique regulation to encourage early reductions of hazardous air pollutants before our formal regulations go into place. And by the end of this year, we intend to propose standards for toxic air pollutant reductions from the pulp and paper industry, from chromium electroplaters, from commercial sterilizers, printing and publishing facilities, shipbuilding facilities, petroleum refineries, and lead smelters. In addition, we're continuing to study the problem of toxic air pollutants so that as we proceed throughout this decade, we can fashion additional regulations as they are needed to protect human health. Taken together, this effort represents the most comprehensive attempt by the federal government to address the problem of toxic air pollutants. This has been an effort that we recognize has been long in coming. Prior to the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990, we had not, in fact, regulated a significant number of hazardous air pollutants. But now, under these new requirements, Congress has clearly directed the agency to proceed aggressively to reduce the emissions of these pollutants. The provisions of that act really embody a two-phased approach to reducing hazardous air pollutant emissions. The law requires that over the next 10 years, EPA reduce emissions from all of the major sources of a large number of specific air pollutants. In fact, 289 air pollutants. 189. And we have to do this by writing standards that achieve the best possible control technology given this current state of science. Once we complete this sequence of regulations, of which the regulation that we're dealing with tonight is the first, we then are not done. We have to go back and take a second look at all of these facilities, determine whether any remaining risk after those technology controls are in place is significant, and to require the addition of more controls if they are needed to protect human health and the environment. So we really are at the beginning of our program. We have selected this particular rule to be one of the first issued under this program because the chemical industry is, in fact, one of the largest sources of toxic air pollutant emissions. We believe that these regulations will result in a reduction of the emission of hazardous air pollutants by about 500,000 tons a year. That will be the largest reduction we've ever achieved by regulation and will constitute major progress in achieving the nation's air quality goals. We've proposed those regulations. The proposal has raised a number of questions. We know there are a number of significant issues that we need to address before we can finalize these regulations later this year, and that's why we're all here tonight. We are very interested in hearing about your opinions on these regulations. We will take your suggestions fully into account in developing our final rules, and we're very pleased to be here to learn what your views are on these subjects. So again, thank you for your interest, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here tonight to listen to your comments. I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Bruce, who will introduce the rest of the proceedings. Bruce.
Thank you, Mike. We want to go ahead and get started with our hearings tonight. Mike has already introduced our hearing officers, Dr. Jan Meyer. Jan has been instrumental in helping to develop this regulation. She's extremely familiar with it, and she will be our hearing officer tonight, and so I'll turn the meeting over to her so that we can go ahead and start to get the speakers. Jan?
Okay. Before we actually have the first speaker, I'd like to go through a little procedural details. Basically, what we want to do tonight is give everybody who's requested an opportunity to speak, and then after the people who've registered to speak have spoken, we'll let anybody who has not registered to speak have an opportunity to speak. And because there's some scheduling problems, as I understand it, John Talmadge is going to be helping us with the speakers, especially from the local groups. So John will be announcing the names of the people who are from his organization are going to come forward in the order that they're available. Is that correct, John?
I don't know if I have to make the announcements. I may end up going to let people know while the other person is speaking.
Okay, well, I'm not sure if the order I have them in is they're even here. So
Do they have to be announced?
we need to know the name of the person who's speaking
I
for
think
the
that
court recorder.
the procedure should be when they come up that they announce their name and their affiliation.
That'll be fine.
I think that makes
Yep.
the most sense.
Okay, well, the first name I have, before I get into we do have a court recorder who's making a transcript of the hearing, and as soon as a copy of the transcript is available, we will be putting it in the docket, which is located in Washington, D.C. If anybody here would like a copy of the transcript, please give me your name and address, and we'll try to get you a copy as soon as one's available. It takes us several weeks to get it ready, so you'll have to be patient. And we will be accepting written comments on rulemaking until April 19th. And so people can have an opportunity to submit comments on the rule or rebuttal to testimony made in any of the hearings. And after we receive the comments, we will fully consider everything, and we will begin developing a final package, which we anticipate be this fall sometime. And basically tonight there are about 23 groups that have indicated they'd like to speak, and again, I'd like to try and make this as smooth as possible, John, so I may have names here that aren't ready yet, so I'll need you to tell me when to go on. And so the purpose of myself, Bruce, and Mike is basically to ask clarifying questions on any testimony that we may have uncertainty about the point that's being made, but we're here to hear you, and we're not basically here to debate anything. So the first speaker that on the list that I have is Pat Bryan.
We're going to jumble the list already. Rick Abraham of Texans United is
Just
the first speaker.
Okay.
Identify himself, please.
Okay, please identify yourself for the court recorder.
That
That
chair right there,
first
please.
mic is active.
My name is Rick Abraham. I'm the director of Texans United Education Fund out of Houston, Texas, with offices in Dallas as well. All right.
Yes.
Yes.
Texans United is a 50,000 member environmental organization. We have about 30 affiliated organizations as well, and what we do is to provide organizing and technical assistance to communities with pollution problems. Many of these communities are located next to chemical plants and refineries, and it's on behalf of those communities that I am here to to give testimony today. We want to thank the EPA for holding this hearing. We hope that it signals a new policy of openness and accountability. Hearings such as this are very important, but we learned a long time ago that dialogue and rhetoric is no substitute for substance and action. And whether this hearing is really worth something will depend on whether or not it makes a difference in people's lives back home. And we think that difference needs to be made. Contrary to what the Chemical Manufacturers Association and other polluting industries will be telling you, toxic emissions from chemical plants are destroying people's lives and taking those lives. Quickly when there are accidents, and not so quickly with routine emissions. It would be a fair question to ask, if it's so bad, why aren't more people here? Why didn't we bring a busload from Texas? Frankly, it's hard to get people excited about new regulations and new rules, because people have seen regulations and rules come and go, and still the poisoning continues in their communities. They see rules that are written that are not enforced. So people are not excited about this. We understand that these rules are important. Especially this one. It's one of the first, I understand, that will be written under the Clean Air Act. And rules represent the government's level of commitment to clean air. We understand that they don't prevent pollution, but they certainly set boundaries which companies are a little more reluctant to cross. Of rules and regulations governing pollution, I've learned two things over my 7 years of working in these communities around toxic pollution problems. Companies will often do less than the rules require, and because of inadequate enforcement, will usually get away with it. The other thing that I've learned is that companies will rarely, if ever, do more than the rules require to reduce pollution. It's for these reasons that we don't need weak rules that give companies too much room to move around. If we give them too much room, they're going to move towards more pollution. The reason is obvious. It's a way of externalizing costs and increasing profits. These proposed rules governing the organic chemicals industry are too weak. They do not put enough of the substance to the rhetoric about the strong Clean Air Act that we all hoped for. The number one problem with these rules is that they still allow for millions of pounds of dangerous toxic chemicals to be legally dumped into the air we breathe. At a time when I can be fined for driving down the highway and throwing a piece of paper out the window, chemical companies in this country can still dump millions of pounds of dangerous toxic chemicals into the air that hurt people and do it with impunity. What is bad about this rule and the provisions which allow interpollutant trading, pollution credits, and averaging of emissions is the underlying assumption that some pollution is okay, even when that pollution is avoidable. With this proposed rule, we move beyond the assumption that some pollution is unavoidable as industry makes this transition to clean up their act, and we say it's okay to pollute with certain chemicals at certain times from certain sources, even when it's avoidable. We believe that a company should always, not just some of the time, but should always do everything it can to reduce emissions of toxics. Just because it does better than required for one period of time should not give it the right to pollute at another period of time. Just because it cuts back on the release of some toxic chemicals, it should not have the right to increase the release of other toxic chemicals that might be more dangerous. I think we all agree that toxic emissions create health problems. Some people would argue that, but certainly everyone in this room would agree that it at least puts people at risk. If someone does something that hurts someone or puts them at risk, knowing that they don't have to, that these emissions can be prevented, we think that it's a crime, morally, if not legally. And the provisions which allow this to happen, the provisions of this rule, we think are criminal. EPA has given a lot of lip service to this concept of waste reduction and pollution prevention. And it says basically that a company should always, not just some of the time, but always do everything it can to reduce the generation of waste and pollution, and thereby reduce or eliminate the risk to public health and the environment. These rules should make this happen, and to see that this happens, the rules should include provisions which call for companies to come forward with plans identifying proposed actions and time frames for specific chemicals and sources of emissions. What companies should also provide list of options that are considered and for reducing those emissions and reasons to justify the options chosen and those options which are rejected. The other thing the company should do is they should report on the progress of the steps that have been taken to reduce these emissions. I want to leave this hearing and leave you with a thought, actually a concept that President Reagan put forward, which I thought hit the nail right on the head. And I think this happened when there was a yacht that was taken over by the Coast Guard because they found one marijuana cigarette on board. And everyone was hollering, you know, why repossess this yacht, put everyone in jail over one marijuana cigarette? And the policy in effect then was one of zero tolerance. When it comes to drugs and these chemicals, you know, the government took the position that there should be zero tolerance. Any little bit was harmful. That's the same kind of approach we should take to dealing with toxic chemicals. That's the direction we need to move in. This rule does not move in that direction. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Mr. Avery. Bruce, do you have any questions?
No, I think I got his notes well. Thank you
Okay,
very much, sir.
Thank you very much. John, is the other party with Texas United coming?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
right here. Howdy, my name is Jim Schirmbeck, and I work in the Dallas office of Texans United.
Could you spell your last name?
It's S-C-H-E-R-M-B-E-C-K.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm from North Texas, and unlike this area, Cancer Alley or the Ship Channel in Houston, we're not particularly known in Dallas-Fort Worth for our concentration of polluters. And that's generally true, except for two big areas in my part of the country. One of those exceptions is the area of West Dallas, where 70 or 80 industries do their business side by side with thousands of Mexican-American and African-American residents who have all been crowded into an area with insufficient zoning, without buffer zones and so on, to such an extent that the overlapping concentration and emissions from these industries are causing quite a few health problems in West Dallas. The other big exception is in Midlothian, Texas, and unfortunately this rule does not affect this particular community because their problem are three big cement plants that are burning the hazardous waste from a lot of these plastics and chemical companies that are being regulated under this rule. They're turning in to be one of the largest capitals of incineration of waste in the U.S., despite not having one commercial incinerator in the city limits of Midlothian, just these three cement plants. In both cases, in both of these communities, these situations are out of control, and they're out of control because the EPA has been missing in action on the regulatory front with their situations for the last 12 years. Actually, they've been worse than missing in action. They've actually aided industries both in West Dallas and in Midlothian to pollute more. Now, past EPAs have allowed this to happen. It's my hope today, starting with this new administration, that we will see a change of direction. I'm hoping that that change of direction will be reflected in these rules. In the West Dallas situation, it was not only the federal government, but state and local governments that contributed to that, but certainly it was the idea and the theory of risk assessment that made the concentration of these industries possible. And with the cement kilns, it was the original RCRA loophole that left them open to burn hazardous waste and call it recycled fuel, and now new BIF rules that are being written by y'all that in effect help the cement industry become a new incineration industry. As I said, I think EPA has an opportunity to start making up for that kind of lost time, but from what I have seen of these rules, it looks very doubtful, or at least upon their first drafting, that looks very doubtful. For instance, this whole idea of allowing emissions averaging over long periods of time, nobody that has ever lived around a chemical plant or a polluter for very long can appreciate the subtleties that credit changing and such bring to the table here. There's no real reductions, as far as I can see, going on here. It's a kind of shell game where they're able to substitute some increases for toxins for decreases in other kinds of toxins. To me, this is not an answer. This is simply trading one set of harms for another set. And we're right now, at least in these two communities that I'm talking about a great deal of sickness and illness caused by air emissions from sources of pollution. The whole idea of credits, I believe, is under attack nationally. I think I read just the other day that the state of New York is suing the EPA over this kind of process when it comes to coal plants and power plants. They also, as industry, can maximize exposures, as I understand it, as long as they do some averaging out over a long period of time with low exposures. They can save up for a period of time and then have one big holiday or weekend exposure, which is what the situation is right now. And especially at night, it's a problem. Secondly, this concept, these rules don't take into account cumulative exposures. That is, areas that are already saturated with polluters, or in this case, chemical plants and the like. This area, for instance, all the way from here down to New Orleans, or the Ship Channel, or I would argue West Dallas or Midlothian, are such saturated areas. They deserve some special policy-making attention that says you may no longer do this in this area. They've tolerated enough, they've been exposed enough to these chemicals, and from now on they deserve a special break, either through more aggressive pollution prevention rules or the like. These folks need some special attention from policymakers in Washington, D.C., as well as their own state capitals, for that matter. Thirdly, and probably from my point of view, the most importantly, is that these rules continue the farce that is risk assessment and the use of these ESLs and TLVs and so on. They all buy into the idea that, as Rick said, that a little pollution ain't going to harm you over a long period of time. That just is not my experience out
the toxicity. Ranking pollutants is difficult enough. Determining factors for different toxic endpoints is virtually impossible and requires a value judgment regarding which health effects are most critical. If staff recommend one of these proposal, EPA indicates that a decision to select controls above the MACT floor should consider costs and cost-effectiveness of controls and a comparison of benefits, both quantifiable and non-quantifiable. The preamble also states that the cost-benefit analysis for the HON does not provide an adequate basis for decision-making at this time. However, EPA indicates that it will evaluate benefits as well as costs associated with decisions to go above the floor in future MAC standards. And to the extent that commenters provide additional cost-benefit information, EPA will re-evaluate its risk assessment on the HON prior to final promulgation. Staffa and ALAPCO believe very strongly that it is inappropriate and arguably illegal to subject this or any future MAC decisions to a cost-benefit analysis. Section 112D of the Clean Air Act Amendments of 1990 clearly specifies that the maximum degree of reduction in emissions of the hazardous air pollutants should be achieved with consideration of only the cost, non-air quality health and environmental impacts, and energy requirements. Section 112D further states that emission standards for existing sources may be no less stringent than the MAC floor. It does not call for a justification, particularly based on a cost-benefit analysis, for exceeding the floor. In fact, the legislative history clearly states that the test for a standard should be whether an emission limit is achievable, not whether it is cost-effective or cost-beneficial. A cost-benefit analysis assigns a dollar value to benefits, such as protection of human health, and balances those against the costs for polluters to comply. In the past, EPA attempted to extend cost-benefit participates. Although we plan to provide more detailed comments on control technology issues in our written statement for the docket, I will briefly mention several now. With respect to process vents, Staffa and ALAPCO are concerned that the rule applies to continuous vents only and does not include batch process vents. There are many synthetic organic chemical manufacturing facilities that use batch process operations, and under the proposed rule, these will not be subject to the requirements.
conduct a joint investigation of the Rubicon plant site in Goshen. The Louisiana DEQ Air Division is taking the position that any emissions on a plant site, even if those emissions come from another plant, are an OSHA rather than DEQ responsibility. But BASF workers cannot ask OSHA to inspect Rubicon. According to the AFL-CIO, it would take the OSHA 107 years to inspect every workplace in Louisiana with its current staff. We are suffering from these emissions, and now we cannot wait for OSHA to get around to acting on its own. Thank you.
Thank you. To all of you gentlemen, I appreciate your testimony and appreciate your comments. If you have some information, you mentioned wastewater particularly, and this is a new area that we're exploring in, some technical information, that would be helpful if you could submit it to us. Also, the monitoring thing, I realize it's a very tough problem that we're wrestling with. If you have some information that you could send to us technically on the monitoring, it would be very helpful to us. On techniques and procedures for monitoring would be very helpful to us.
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So I'd like to sit on this side so I can
Okay.
look at my...
Maybe if you
That's-
could sit
that's-
down and be closer to the mic.
That'd be fine, any way you want
What's
to
your
sit.
suggestion?
If you could get closer to the mic, it might help everyone hear you.
I have a problem kind of turning my back to...
Would you like to be on this side of the table? Would that help from this side of the table?
I think it'd be better here.
Okay, whatever. In fact, if you like, you can come up here if you want to, so you can see.
Let's, one.
I'll do that. I'll do it from right here.
Those mics may be.
I don't know if they're dead or not.
I just have a problem talking to people.
One judge that every now and then down here in Cancer Alley, we have to go to court for violating some of the rules of the state as we try to keep the companies down there from violating the rules of God and creation. And sometimes you have to testify, and when you have to testify, sometimes you have to stand, they make you stand with your back to the audience. And it's kind of hard to give a real testimony with your back to the people, and I'm glad you sensed that. First, I'd like to thank all of those who have come out tonight to give you testimony. And I think we've had a great showing of people who will testify tonight about the conditions, inhuman conditions that they live under. And particularly, I'd like to thank the officers and the staff and our membership of the Gulf Coast Tenants Organization, who've made an extra mile to come here tonight. More than about 100, we have more than 100 people here tonight from different places in Cancer Alley and around the Deep South who are burdened with the waste and the discharges of the chemical industry. Also, we want to thank you and the Clinton administration for hearing our request and our pleas to move this hearing from North Carolina to the place where the dirty work has been done, the place where people are dying here in Cancer Alley. Our governor, if you stay around here long, will probably tell you there's no such place. And we're here to tell you that there is a place, Cancer Alley. If you don't believe it, you guys from the EPA should come down and talk to people. Stay around and you'll see by, not in empirical studies, but you will see that the most common social occasion is funerals and people going to visit their relatives in the hospitals who are dying of cancer. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen a song that helped our people endure and overcome slavery, tells our stories of the struggles we endured to survive the last 40 years or so of petrochemical expansion. There are a number of places: Morrisonville, Revealtown, Sunrise, once very alive and very vibrant communities, are now dead. So hush-hush were their deaths that nobody even knew of their funerals. If we were to erect a grave marker for these communities, I suppose that the epitaph would read, "Strong people, tricked by a lure of jobs, non-existing jobs, became host to profit makers, bodies rotten with cancer sores, children born without brains, vegetables wouldn't grow, children couldn't learn, plant workers sick and dying, the healthy unemployed, politicians bought, the land stolen by the profit makers." This is our story that nobody knows but Jesus. Those communities that have not yet been poisoned into extinction hold out the opportunity for the Clinton administration to address with us the wrongs of the past. It is our death, our suffering, and the struggles to survive that we bring into national focus as a window of opportunity to stop killing us and all living things here and around the world. And I'm sure that this is our contribution to history. Between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, there are 138 petrochemical companies. Nobody knows how much poison they put in the air, the land, and the water. You know the system that we have developed of the honor code, where they tell us what they put in the air. We know they're lying. We take it in every day. They've been talking about constant reduction since 1987. We know that's a lie. Just the opposite is happening. To allow those who poison us the privilege of being on their honor to report how much poison they dump on us is ridiculous. Government monitoring devices at each stack, at each source of potential poisoning is a must. If we have satellites out in space that are so well equipped that they can read a license tag in front of the Kremlin, those same satellites can tell you how much and what kind of poison is coming out of Exxon's facility over on Scenic Road. We cannot leave the wolf and the fox in charge of the hen house any longer. Now, we lobbied Congress in 1990 not to allow the creation of dead zones around the plants, because we lived there. That was being proposed without any regard to the consequences that poor African Americans, Latinos, Asians, and poor white folk have to live under.
Guinea pig.
That's right, guinea pigs, brother said. He's right. We won that battle to kill this provision about the dead zones. We won that. But we lost the battle with the Bush administration's Council on Competitiveness and the Bush Environmental Protection Agency. And the Bush administration proposed to enforce the Clean Air Act with this proposed HON rule. This rule is a joke, brothers and sisters. It means death to our workers and people who live in the plants. How can the Clinton administration even consider emissions averaging that would allow petrochemical manufacturers to, I quote, reduce the less deadly poisons and allow the more deadly poisons to remain the same? I didn't say pollution now. Poison. Watch the words. We get into the word game, and that which is deadly becomes less deadly. How can EPA even think of letting the petrochemical profit makers sneak 280 million pounds of chemical through this big loophole in the HON rule? This simply must not be done. We will not allow it to be done, quite frankly. Our homes, our mothers, and our loved ones are in the loophole where these poisons and chemicals are produced. And we demand justice. We elected.
I'd like to speak.
One second, brother.
How would you like for your family, your little baby, your little children playing in the yard, to run out and catch crawfish in a canal that leads out from coal power plant and eating the chemicals with the crawfish?
Sir, could you...
That's a shame, man.
Could you let him finish? You can
I
speak
live in that
later.
area. I know what's going on.
They're going to give a chance
Sir,
to speak.
please.
This is a very emotional thing.
I'd like you to have an opportunity to conclude
Right.
and let him speak.
Right. This is a very emotional thing. We must remember that people are dying daily. People are sick. We elected President Clinton to stop, not reduce our poisoning. If these poisons were pumped into affluent white communities and into the Sears Tower or to the Empire State Building, these companies would have been stopped and nothing flat. No doubt about it. No one would ask the President and the EPA to reduce anything. The demand that the affluent white America would make and have made consistently is to stop the poisoning of their communities. Our communities, the poor white communities, the African American communities, other people of color communities, those are the communities that are being poisoned. It's criminal, it's immoral, and it doesn't have to happen because there is the technology to stop it. There's no reason for it.
You claim you care so much about humanity and creating all these scientific events to go over to discover places to live on the moon and taking pollution up there and sending it back over to acid rain up there in Canada and all over the United States.
Sir,
and we live it in that. We
sir,
live
it'd
it
be
in
a lot
that.
easier
We don't
for
want to
the
live
court
in
recorder
conditions like that.
if you could wait and let him finish
I'm sorry,
speaking.
but he's taking too long to get his point across. I thought
Please, the court recorder is very difficult. Please, order, please.
The audience has spoken. Thank you, brother. I'm going to speed it up. We expect President Clinton and the EPA to change this rule. We ask the President and EPA Administrator Carol Browner not to be swayed by the chemical industry propaganda that these chemical jobs are going to be lost. These are scare tactics. In fact, the opposite is true. Should the EPA regulate these companies properly, more jobs will be created by the introduction of new technology. Then we can get down to the business of cleaning up the terrible mess in Cancer Alley Baton Rouge, Columbia, Mississippi, Mobile, Alabama, New Orleans, Birmingham, Houston, East Bay, Texas, and a lot of other places that have been poisoned by these industries. The cleanup of our communities will create enough jobs to bring about full employment for several decades. These are the jobs that we seek. The poison. Wait a minute, brother. You're gonna have your chance.
I'll cut you off.
Wait a minute, brother. You've been.
I want to tell you something.
Wait a minute.
That Exxon plant that's going on right now in our community is rubbing off homeless people out on the street collecting cans.
Brother, you're gonna have an opportunity.
You can discover about a dozen out there in my area.
Brother,
I don't give my cash to EPA. I give to the hungry brother that's out there on his bicycle, trying his best to make a living for himself and his children. And the plant is the one that's knocking out all the jobs by killing people and destroying the air and killing people that deserve to live.
Sir, please.
the brother lives in Dixie. He lives in a place that's called Dixie.
Perhaps,
And I understand his frustration.
well, yeah, perhaps
It's bad even from the expressway.
he can speak next. Could you
Sure, we're
go
gonna
ahead and start,
take
please, and then we'll let him speak.
What we're asking it's very uncomfortable here. I think we have more people than they expected tonight.
Let me see if I
Turn
can.
the air conditioning.
What we are, I'll see if I can find it. Go
Okay,
ahead.
go
I'll
ahead,
see if I can
please,
find it.
proceed.
So we come here tonight saying that the president, what we're asking you to do is to restore the people's confidence in government. America will continue down a road of destructive poisoning as long as there is an acceptable people of color community or poor white community that will be the site of the destruction. As we say no and put our bodies on the line, the profit-making companies can do nothing else but use the technology that is available. We call upon the best science that is available in universities, particularly people of color universities, to assist our movement and to assist in the development of projects to get us out of this mess. Right here in Cancer Alley, maybe in a little place called Lyons, or maybe in Dixie, or some of the other places here. While the chemical, we hope that we send a message to the president that we have been in a terrible nightmare, that we have awakened from this nightmare. And all of us, including the president, including Carol Brown, have a lot of work to do. Making just regulations to stop the chemical companies from poisoning is a first step. However, it could be a healing first step in a long, long journey toward environmental justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Now, if the gentleman who's had a great enthusiasm about speaking would like to come forward and take a few minutes to speak, we can accommodate you now.
I'm going to respect you. I'm not. Wait a minute. I'm not going to interrupt you.
You done spoke, now let me speak.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We live here. This is our country just like it's yours. We black.
Could you
Excuse me for being so bold, ma'am, but I just have to get this off my chest.
Oh, can you give us your name? That's
Could
all.
you give us your name
That's all we
first?
want.
My name is Don Ray Taylor.
There you go.
I live in County Alley. I reside there, and I'll probably be bad over there. And because I smoke, I'm trying my best to bring my back to overcome that smoking habit. I'm doing everything to good master, and everybody else got to control their vessels and their own opportunity to do the same thing to try to save their lives. This is supposed to be the country of the free, the home of the brave. I fought in the army. I didn't fight in a war. I went and served my country. I did it with 2 bad knees. I didn't complain. I did everything they asked you to do. Now we asked you for something to give me something back from what I did. I served and protected you. Now you do something to help me. You give me a check every month to help me. And I thank you for your support. And when I can't live, and my kids can't live in conditions that are deplorable, I've seen DEQ bring big machines dumping very foul chemicals right in the middle of the highway. One morning I walked out to get a breath of fresh air. I called myself to take an exercise walk about 1 block because so many drugs. We need to concentrate on getting these chemicals out of the air and saving these poor brothers and sisters who are on drugs and alcohol. That could be stopped. Just tell them, you have to stop. We can't make you stop. We have to deploy within ourselves the vessels of strength that the good Lord gave each and every one of us to step up and face our own responsibilities and overcome habits that we have. I know cigarettes is hard to quit. I face up to this. But don't blame it on me. The air pollution is coming from the class big. It's coming from several classes, not just one. The money from the garbage coming to pull together so much power within chemicals that the world is going berserk in chemical laws of waste all over the United States and Canada and over in Europe, and people are losing jobs, they're losing their lives, the old folks are dying off. That's why the population level between youth and the old folks is so high right now, because they trying to hold on to the last little breath that they got left. It's a shame. It's a complete shame to come back home to face another war, you know? A war between my white brothers, my black comrades. I don't hold sweet to either side. I love white folks as much as I do black. And sometimes you put me on the line, I step on your toe and put you in your place, because I'm not the one to be messing with, because I believe God is with me and He's with you. But with you, with my faith in Him, I've used vessels of my own strength to ask Him to bring rain, snow, sleet, and hail, just to make a move to show white people that rule this country and run this city and this town and this state that we mean business. We want these chemicals cleaned up now. Now. Because it's business.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Rosemary?
I didn't interrupt you. Don't do that to me next time. You're gonna learn who I am next time. All right.
Could you give
Good
us?
afternoon. Rosemary Smith from Monroe, Louisiana. And I'm the chairperson of Monroe Tennis Organization and also Gulf Coast Tennis.
Speak up.
Oh,
Is it on? Is it on?
no, it's not even working. Oh, take that. Okay, you want my name again? Okay. We live up and down the Cancer Alley here in Louisiana. We have marched, protests. We have done everything that's possible. And I'm here tonight to tell DEQ, EPA, and everyone else that is a problem, hoping that a solution would come quickly. First of all, the HON rule is not helping us. We want quick action on all these chemical plants across Louisiana, starting with Baton Rouge on down, that is poisoning our land and our air. And we are here tonight to tell you all that we are sick and tired and sick of what these chemical companies are doing to us. I'm speaking about the poor, and I'm speaking about the Latino and the Indians. Now, when the rich white folks go to their neighborhood, they are in a clean environment. No offense to you, but I'm telling it like it is. We are left breathing this terrible air, drinking this filthy, nasty water that is causing us to have all kind of sickness, especially cancer. Louisiana have the highest cancer rate in the United States. And this is sad. And it's about time that these chemical companies understand that we will not take it no more. We don't mean to tone it down. We mean to stop it. And all the companies in Baton Rouge, all across Louisiana, must understand we are in the 90s and we are tired marching. But if we have to, we'll continue marching. But in the meantime, we are asking that the EPA and the DEQ give us a better quality of air, land, and water, because we are sick and tired. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Melinda Doris is next.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Rolinda Doris, and I live in St. John Parish, and I'm a member of the River Area Planning Group. And this is... Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. I'm also the coordinator of the Sensational Young Brothers and Sisters organization, which is a coalition of young high school students that got together in order to save the cancer alley and save the communities in which they live in. And living in Cancer Alley is not an ordinary life like everyone else has. People in my neighborhood are plagued with cancers, allergic reactions, diseases, all types of infections and ailments that aren't normal to the everyday population. And it's sort of funny because the incidence of these type of sickness is at an all-time high in this area. And I think it has something to do directly with the chemical industry in that area. And I think you all do too. But we're not getting any answers. And it's time that the chemical plants stop polluting and EPA start regulating and clean up our communities so we can live normal and healthy lives again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Noel and Henry Jenkins. Is Liza here? You want to go ahead? Charlotte?
Shirley Keys, right here. There's Shirley.
You may need to get
Those two are
this.
working, I think.
First thing I like to do tonight is to give honor to God for this occasion. I come to represent the poor people that is suffering from toxic poison. Let me introduce myself by letting you know that I have an organization established that is called Jesus People Against Pollution. Also a member of the Southern Organizing Committee. Also work with Gulf Senate Organization. And we all work together on behalf of working for environmental justice for all, not just for some, but for all, that is suffering from toxic poison. I will talk a little bit briefly about the situation of Columbia, Mississippi. All of the stories that you have heard tonight kind of relates together. I am a resident of Columbia, Mississippi, born and raised there. And this place was established in December the 8th, 1811, 6 years before Mississippi was admitted to slavery. The people of Columbia, Mississippi existed before any industries came into the area. The African American and the poor owned and rented within the city limits. Columbia has always been a racist place and have always been known to have a racist background. All across the South, modern time slavery has been injected in our society. In the governmental seats that a lot of the people hold, we find that a lot of the rules and regulations as far as protecting the environment is not being enforced. You find where many laws are enforced when it comes to the poor. But when it comes time for the government people to enforce the rules and regulations on behalf of a clean and safe environment for the poor, you find that none of these rules and regulations are being enforced. I wrote down a few things that I would like to discuss tonight, and some of which deal with companies moving into grassroots communities and disrupting human beings' lives, that oftentimes lifestyle is always imposed upon. Nothing ever gets done to help the poor when it comes time for clean land, air, and water. As stated earlier, there are many rules and regulations, but none of them have been enforced when it comes to us. And I put myself in that category because of where I come from. I am an African American, one who is very proud to be. I am also, if you want to say so, come from a poor level. Not like the rich that have a silver spoon in the mouth, nor have I been born with a silver spoon in the mouth. And I don't profess that. But I'm here tonight to represent, as I stated, the poor, because in all other communities across the nation, we need clean land, air, and water. And I don't see anything wrong tonight with people voicing their opinions. But on behalf of voicing the opinions, it is time that these opinions is taken into consideration with the people that sit in authority, that have the authority to help make the resources available that's needed. Some of these resources that's needed, as I stated, is clean land, air, and water. Even if it means the people coming to the streets, as it was, as what you all call the civil rights movement. We are willing to do whatever is necessary to see that these communities is restored to health again. President, the Vice President, EPA, ATSBR, Congress, senators, corporations, and many others have the authority tonight to make the resources available that is needed for these suffering communities. And we call upon all of you tonight to adhere to the concerns of the toxic poisoning citizens. We are not guinea pigs, we are not dogs, and we are not heathens. We are human beings that is asking and demanding that the resources that God has made available for all be allowed once again for us to use in the way that God has created for them to be used. We will have clean land, air, and water. We will not stop until we are in an environment where clean land, air, and water exist. If the rich can have it, the poor can also. With this new administration and authority, they should see to it that all human beings have access to all the resources that is needed for one to live. And we ask and demand tonight that all of you that sit, that have the authority to make the resources available to do so. Thank you.
We will take a 10-minute break right now to give the court recorder an opportunity to rest her wrist. Just 10 minutes, okay?